Hi, everyone. I am Ed Harrison. I'm a managing director at Inkhouse, and today I am here with Ben Worthen, Chief Product Officer at Orchestra. Hey, Ben, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am great. I am very excited to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem. I feel like the best outcome we can have here is not making the whole thing just be 1990s Simpsons references.
I,
So,
I mean, honestly, that'll be in the director's cut. We'll have that.
yeah,
That's
or the Celtics.
so yeah, let's. I want to just sort of take a step back here. You started as a journalist at the Wall Street Journal. I'm fairly certain I pitched you at some point. You went on to lead content at Sequoia, and now running Message Lab as part of Orchestra, and in your new role at Orchestra now too. And so I guess what is the sort of like the common thread that has guided your work in storytelling and communications across all that?
Yeah. I mean, I was about to say that the common thread there is just dumb luck.
I gotta think it's more than that, but yeah, yeah.
Um, um, I would say that there are sort of two things. I'm going to answer the question two ways. First of all, from a personal standpoint, I think the connective tissue between all of the different roles is just curiosity. People get into journalism for a range of different reasons and motivations, and mine was that I just couldn't believe people would pay me money to ask questions and learn the answers to things. And as I have moved into a world of doing content marketing and now thinking about things like how do we use AI across a large organization. It's still that curiosity and the love of asking questions and learning the answer that is motivating me. In terms of the through line about storytelling and all of that, I mean, look, I had to learn that wasn't, curiosity is sort of some innate thing that I have, many other people do too. But the art of telling a story is something that was beaten into me, almost literally. And I would look back at my time at the journal as being most formative, where you would have someone, you'd be pitching a story, you'd think it was the best idea in the world, and you would just relentlessly be asked the question, why does anybody care?
Mm.
And and it seems like such an easy thing to be able to answer, but if you ever try this actually and just sit there and ask that question of someone over again and over and over and over again, like you're a broken record, um, it's one of those like hard
Oh
things.
yeah, I feel like that's an important question. We have a lot of clients with lofty expectations about. We're talking about earned media now, about business press coverage, and that's a question we have to ask them too. Like, why does anyone care about this exactly?
Yeah, and in fact, when I was a reporter, I was on the receiving end of those pitches. Like the
I'm sure.
overwhelming majority were not ones anybody would care about. I would sort of jokingly tell people that the story they were pitching me, I would summarize as like a company you've never heard of does something you don't care about, and
Yeah,
and
I
it's like
feel like I've got 3 decades of those, so that makes sense. Absolutely.
yeah, and it's not. I mean, it ain't gonna fly, right? And so
Right.
my job to get to get my work out into the world, which was how you were ultimately measured, was to figure out, okay, well, what's the angle? What's the thing that's going to get somebody to care? And then, of course, you're precisely right. That same skill is the one that sort of works, whether it's any aspect of
Sure.
communications, whether it's your own storytelling, which is much closer to what I did in a newsroom, right? It was basically just writing articles on behalf of an entity, a client, as opposed to a publication, but the job is the same. Can we get someone to care, right? And the reason they hired us was for that reason. Or, if you're doing more traditional public relations, get anybody to care. And similarly, in social media, you've got like half a second to get somebody's attention. How do you make somebody care? So I think that question has applies to sort of like every tool that we have in our toolkit as sort of modern multi-channel communicators, where there is both sort of like an art but also frankly a science
Mhm.
to getting people to care, and the actions that we take, whether it's the visuals we use in a social post or an online story, whether it's the email that we write when we're trying to get someone to take a meeting, like all of that. The job is, how do you make someone care? And then just to sort of dot the I or cross the T, so to speak. Um, one of my jobs right now is to help um, get orchestra to adopt and use artificial intelligence, right? And like you could look at that as a tech problem, but honestly, I think it's actually a culture problem more than anything else. A problem's not the right word, but like an opportunity. And but how do we do it? We got to make people care,
Right.
right? And if you and it's like and the only thing that I think is going to influence our success or failure here is whether or not we can get like our internal teams to sort of pay attention and to care, to sort of like apply that same thing. So I do think that there's something fairly universal about that. Why does anybody care? Question, and then the ability to figure out how to get people to care.
And this is I'm always curious when journalists rather come over to the so-called dark side here. How jarring was it for you sort of making the transition from being, a journalist to working on the other side?
Well, I had well, so I had a first job. You mentioned it. I went to a VC firm and spent a year as the head of content there. That was definitely a jarring year, I would say.
Okay.
I kind of referred to it as like my year of getting over myself or my time in the wilderness. But I think what I realized there was that I had one very overdeveloped skill, which was like telling a story, and I lacked many other skills. And like baseline thing, like the very first time I ever did a PowerPoint presentation,
Oh,
I
really? Okay. I
I
guess you
shared
wouldn't have to do that as a writer. That makes
no,
sense.
it was Google Slides, but
Right.
but still, I put together a deck and I shared it with some colleagues. And the next morning I walked in and like everybody I knew and cared about was around a table waiting for me to pull an intervention, So it's like, I just didn't know how to do so many things that like the
Sure.
typical 23-year-old in communications knows how to do.
Right.
And so
Were they at least gentle with you ultimately, or were they?
oh, you know how it was. There was
Yeah.
like 12 steps, and work through all of them.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I had an easier transition, especially with Message Lab, because Message Lab was not a traditional
Right.
communications firm, right? We didn't do PR. None of the former journalists who worked at Message Lab were ever put in the position of like calling their former colleagues and trying to pitch a story. It was overtly to do and still is to sort of do journalism, but just do it on the behalf of clients as opposed to on behalf of a publication. And so I sometimes refer to it as like the home for aging journalists, where it's like
I mean,
it
that's it. There have been some, I mean, some truly great names that have been there, and like people I pitched in the past who have adapted very well to telling stories the way we do it now, which is
yeah,
great.
and in part because it's a your message lab was trying to essentially take people who had a particular skill and then ask them to actually do that skill,
Right.
as opposed to learn an entirely different one. And of course, there's so many amazing communications professionals who had an early part of their career in journalism. There's many who didn't, but and so journalism is, I think, a weird amalgam of skills,
Mhm.
and different people have different ones to different degrees. But like, for instance, there's no reason that the same person who can go out and dig up details should be a good writer. Like why do those two
Right.
skills,
That's interesting. I mean,
you
two potentially entirely different skill sets.
totally, right?
Yeah.
And I think I worked with people who were brilliant writers, but not great reporters. And I met with people who were amazing reporters, but like honestly, like if you ever read their copy, you'd be like, wow, and then I was somewhere in the middle. I was like pretty good at both.
Mhm.
And and I think that that's actually helped me as I've made this transition. And then to go back to the thing that we sort of kicked the conversation off with, like I've always just been really really curious, and so the ability to understand the trade craft of communications as a sort of its own discipline is also just incredibly interesting to me.
So I want to talk a little bit about storytelling and then, of course, AI, because AI is at pretty much everything now. I guess in your experience, what makes a story truly resonate with people?
puppies mostly. You
Okay.
know, if you can get a puppy in
Love
the
puppies. You can't go wrong with that.
golden.
True.
Um, no, I mean, I joke about the puppies, but really, um, people, I think more so than anything else, we are sort of by millions of years of, breeding social creatures. And that's no different when we're sort of consuming a story. We take our medicine better when it comes with two spoonfuls of sugar of other people and their experiences. I'd also say, early in message labs tenure, we would go around and we would do this exercise where we would sort of begin every engagement that we did by just going out and being like, well, we're just going to talk to people who are like the people that you're going to reach. And like, we don't give us your clients. They drink the Kool-Aid, they know who you are and all of that. Just like tell us the kind of people that you care about, and we'll go out and we'll just like find them and talk to them and interview them and figure out kind of what makes them click, right?
Mhm.
And what they want in stories too, right? Because that's kind of driving what we're doing. And I don't know, did this like more than 100 times.
Okay.
Small business owners, yeah, VPs of engineering at 100-person web-based companies, Airbnb hosts, CFOs at startup, like you name it, right? We did it. And I think what we found was that everybody said the same thing. Um, Everybody wanted, first and foremost, to hear how someone like them solved a
Mhm.
problem they could
Mhm.
relate to, more so than anything else. And then secondarily, they said they wanted data that was going to help them make better decisions. Spoiler alert here, nobody has ever said, I really want a generic byline by a corporate executive I don't know. Like
I'm
of all the
shocked.
things that
Shocked
would
by
be most helpful to me, like that's what I want.
right.
So
Right.
yeah, it's like not on the list.
And
But
I mean, that's interesting. I think something we've done at Ink House a little differently too. I feel like is B2B tech tends to be, in the abstract, it can be a little bit soulless sometimes because people just start talking about technology and features. But I think focusing in on people, on emotions, a desire to be seen as strategic, a desire to solve problems, I think it's a really important part of sort of breaking through the noise.
yeah, and I think anybody who knows a little bit of something about the issue that they're dealing with, doesn't really want 5 tips. I
Mhm.
think one of the things that we found is that anybody who has any degree of expertise, and again, whether this is like you as a consumer who's an avid shoe collector, or whether it's you, the CFO trying to make big decisions about like, I don't know, where do we put our factory, right?
Mhm.
Um, they know enough that anything that is a 10 tips or 3 things, it's just too general, it's too generic, it's not helpful. And I think there was I think it was Andrew Stanton, who was the Pixar guy, who told this story once about how when it comes to storytelling, he says, the trick is that people want to do the work.
Mhm.
They just don't want to know that they're working.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and it was this
Yeah.
great line. And I think it's the same thing. I think when people hear about how somebody solved a problem that they can relate to, um, it doesn't feel like they're being told what to do.
Mhm.
But they're able to see how somebody who they can again relate to, how they make a decision. And the decision that the person actually made isn't necessarily the same one that they themselves would make, but they can do the work of sort of plugging in their problem for that person's problem, and they can see how that person's approach, would sort of help guide them in their own context and decision making. And if you think about it, it's the kind of thing that we as individuals do all the freaking time. I mean, if
Sure.
you came to me and you were like, oh, my kid is having this issue with such and such a ton, like I can guarantee you the first thing I would say would be like, well, we went through a similar situation.
100%. Exactly. Exactly. Here's and yeah, no, make it relatable.
Yeah, and then you might sit there and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I have to listen to what Ben's kid is."
I
But
disagree. But yeah.
or you probably might, but sometimes it's like the most helpful thing in the world. And so, I think that's the again the one thing, if I could just go around and like just like tried to say like, here's how we can help, here's how we can help. It's like it's that, it's like taking that technique. How did someone like me solve a problem I can relate to?
Right.
And having all of the people that we work with sort of try to figure out, it's not the only mode of storytelling that they should activate, but like how can you in your broad communication footprint activate that mode of storytelling, whether it's stories about your clients or customers, that you are able to like put out into the world, in social, through the media, on your own channels, whether it's sort of helping curate a conversation between the people who have like subject matter expertise. Again, it could be fashion, it could be accounting, and in the audiences that you're trying to reach. I mean, I think those are the things that are going to be, I think, most useful, and certainly more useful than like, here's 5 things that an associate content manager Googled yesterday.
Right. Right. Yeah. Maybe they started with 2 and they had to get 3 to get to 5,
Yeah.
which just happens a lot. So, I mean, we're more than 50 minutes in, and I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet. So let's talk about AI. What are you and your team, I guess, tell me a little bit about what you're doing with AI right now and what you're most excited about.
Yeah.
Big question, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. So, in my role, I am sort of helping to guide Orchestra's overarching adoption of AI, in addition to trying to figure out how we utilize AI, and this is a subset of that, I suppose, into the sort of the products and services that we deliver for our clients. And I would say, I don't want to get overly wonky about it
Okay.
here.
Like moderate wonkiness is fine though.
Yeah, okay. So moderate. So at the moderate wonky level, I'll sort of reduce it to sort of 2 categories of AI. I think if we want to get super wonky, there's more. But one is, I would say, trying to create at Orchestra a culture where everybody is equipped with the tools and the knowledge and the inspiration to just like figure out how to do their job better.
Mhm.
I'm a big believer that innovation needs to happen sort of throughout the organization, and especially at the edges of the organization.
Mhm.
And that our job as leaders of the organization is to cultivate an environment where people feel encouraged and rewarded for doing that.
Mhm.
And then also like let's figure out ways to surface all the cool stuff that people are doing, and
No,
we
I
keep
know
there
the competition or program, the orchestra.
100%
I
that.
mean, that was fantastic. There were some really ingenious uses of AI to help people do their jobs better.
There were, and I think the whole bet that we were making when we did that was that there were, in fact, totally genius things that people
Yeah,
were doing throughout
yeah,
the organization. And of course there were, because of course there had to be, right?
sure.
And it was just that, this is like who knew, unless you asked.
Right.
So
No, it was no. I think it was just such a breadth of thoughtful sort of applications of it. It was really cool. I think
yeah, and so people, and so how do we create, so how do we take that and make it, instead of having like 5 people who presented and 20 people who submitted,
right.
how do we turn that into 700 people, who are all feel as though it's like part of not just their job, but just like who they are,
Right. Right.
to sort of like try to think that stuff, right? So that's part one, and then part two is, what are the bigger bets that we're able to make because we are an organization that has some scale where we can tackle, what are sort of the biggest problems that we face. And
Yeah, talk a little more about that.
yeah, so I look at it through the lens of what I sort of call it 100x opportunities. And a 100x opportunity is one where something is done a particular way, oftentimes just because it's always the way it's been done. It's not particularly effective.
Mhm.
The results aren't necessarily great, and so forth and so on. But if we reimagined how we could do it because of AI, um, all of a sudden we could just completely invert the curve. We could reduce the cost of delivery by a factor of 10 while simultaneously increasing the value that we give to our clients by a factor of 10 as well. And that's how you get 100x, right?
Peace.
And
I guess in maybe broad or even non-specific terms, can you talk about maybe some things that are happening with that?
yeah, so I'll give you the one that sort of stands out to me
That sounds great. Yeah.
as like sort of the biggest opportunity, and it's media monitoring and reporting, right?
Oh God, absolutely. I mean, I feel like
And
I've been doing this for 30 years and we're still trying to figure out how to do it. So
yeah,
I'd love to hear more about that.
well, right, exactly, and it seems like it's probably done sort of with through variations of the same way it's always been done.
Yep.
And if you think about it, it's a huge amount of time and labor and effort that goes into sort of finding and documenting every article about our clients, and yet the output of that is like really not that great. You know,
It's true. No, it's never as impressive looking as you think it would be based on all the work that goes into it. Absolutely.
yeah, and it doesn't really create strategic value or a point of strategic differentiation. But just as a example, what if we were able to use AI to bring the cost of the time it takes to go out, find, and sort of format every single article about a client down to effectively zero.
Mhm.
And then similarly, have AI read, not just like the 10 articles, but like 1,000 articles, right? On a topic and sort of grade each one using some sort of formula of our own invention, and then turn that into a insights report that maybe we deliver once a month, maybe
Mhm.
it's available on demand, whatever it is, but one that is um, sort of an expert level of analysis and insight, right? All of a sudden, you go where you manage to figure out how do you take the cost out because you have automated portions of what has been historically a very manual process, but you've also changed the deliverable, right? So that instead of it being something that is, like here's your Word doc with all your articles in it,
Yeah.
um, something that is shaped by humans, right? But that is, but because you can go off and read and remember 10,000 articles, 1,000 articles, you can just bring much more sophisticated and sharper analysis and deliver that to the client again at a relatively low cost basis, right?
I mean, I think, the dream has always been that, AI is going to free us up from a lot of the drudge work like that so we can deliver real strategic value. So I think, being able to sort of, yeah, easily and cost effectively present something meaningful is great.
Yeah, and I'm dreaming a little bit here to be clear. But if you think about where we as an organization are able to offer a lot of value is the strength of our network,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But the problem is, or the constraint that we face is that we are also human.
Right.
And it's not reasonable to think that every single person here has perfect memory of every proposal that everyone at Orchestra has ever
I
shared.
certainly do
Right?
not. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know, right? So like, and so, but if we had some sort of like collective intelligence that we could build that sort of had that information in it, like that's another area where we might be able to get some sort of compounding value where, it would make it easier for us to align problems that our clients are facing
Mhm.
with sort of the opportunities that we have, to help them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to tie sort of storytelling and AI here
Yeah.
together. So I guess like a big question here, can AI actually make storytelling better, or is it just more of an efficiency tool?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. Definitely an efficiency tool.
Hmm.
How can it make storytelling better? I, I mean, I actually believe that AI can do what I might call short format writing as well as a person can at this point. Um, Copywriting with the right prompts and instructions, sort of slide level
Right.
writing, that kind of thing. I also believe that the vast majority of writing that we engage with is like information transfer between colleagues, and so much of it is bad. And if
Right.
we could merely make it mediocre, it would be
Slightly
doing
better. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
service. Yeah, like an email,
Right.
right?
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, and I think just for me, it's been my emails are probably 50% better now, just with like a little bit of fine tuning, right? I mean,
Totally.
which is
Yeah.
what it's very good at. Yeah.
And is it going to like 2,500 word feature story that we had written by a Pulitzer Prize winner? Like, not yet, you know.
No, no.
But there's other ways that we can improve our storytelling by the use of AI, that aren't actually like the delivery of the story.
Mm,
So using it to help us brainstorm is one.
yeah.
Using it to give us feedback on ideas is another. Sharpening angles, like you said you do for your email.
Yeah.
Um, so I do think that it can be a very valuable tool there. And even just to sort of go out and sort of create an AI tool that you use as a client team that sort of like mimics your client,
Mhm.
that has some of like the best work that your client has seen, that sort of has captured some of your past client feedback, and sort of, sharing your idea with
Well,
that.
running it through that to see. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and getting some feedback, and all of that. And then by the time that you're actually pitching the idea, it's sharper. You've sort of done the thing yourself before you get it. And you're providing more value,
Right.
right, to the client. And frankly, you're probably saving yourself a little bit. You're making your work more efficient, because instead of having to go through the rigmarole of a meeting to try to pitch the idea only to get it rejected. Um, you
And I think I know we've pitched together a few times. I know one of the times I remember you took and this was it blew my mind. You took our proposal and just I think it took their RFP and our proposal and like ran the two together, just as what are the best things about this? What are the things that are missing? How can we improve this? And
yeah.
it was like having this like really smart colleague that could sort of help you point out some things you might be missing, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's probably right, and I think I would say, um, we as the people, like our clients haven't hired an AI, they've hired us, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So our judgment is still the thing that they're paying for, and that it's valuable, and so we can't abdicate our responsibility
Sure.
to know what good looks like.
Mhm.
But using tools to help us get there, frankly, I think we're negligent if we don't.
Sure. Do you have this is talking with some peers sort of in the industry. We're excited about AI, but there's also this little bit of fear that at some point it could replace us. Like, what do you think about that?
Um,
Please say no. Please say it can't.
I mean, I think it's going to happen more slowly than people expect.
Mhm.
I think it would be naive to think that there isn't going to be, um, I don't know, how do you want to call it, sort of like broad changes,
Mhm.
across sectors. But I think that, the um, I believe that it will be a net increaser of jobs
Mhm. Mhm.
as some rules will change.
Yeah.
I do think that the single best thing that individuals can do is to become comfortable with the tools. And because I don't think an AI is going to replace anybody here
Mhm.
or anywhere anytime soon, but I think that like people who use AI might replace people who don't.
Right. All right.
Um,
No, that makes a lot of sense.
you know,
I
yeah.
guess if and we'll just close with this, and if you're looking out, put your predictions hat on here. You're looking out 5 years. What do you think the role of AI will be in storytelling? What will remain the same, and what will feel completely different?
Um, 5 years is an interesting time frame in which to look at it.
It,
No, 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 it's great.
a lot can happen in 5 years. Yeah.
No, but I think what we will go through is a near-term wave where there's so much bad storytelling put out into the world
Mhm.
because it is AI generated, and it is AI generated without people applying discretion. It is AI generated without people thinking through what is the experience of the person who is going to be consuming this, and how do I as a person ensure that they're having a really good experience. I mean, I think an interesting thing is that I'm pretty sure for the first time ever, the time it takes to create a piece of content is now like faster than the time it takes to consume a piece of content.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Right. And like, I mean, if you're not doing it with care, but like I could certainly go to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me a 600 word article about topic XYZ. And like 90 seconds later, I have it. That
Right.
doesn't mean it's good. But like, is it really fair to the world for me to like make something in 60 seconds and expect people to spend 10 minutes consuming it? Like, can we have a creative value exchange
Mhm.
like that actually has that as its core dynamic? Like I don't think so. And yet I think the world will be flooded with so much terrible AI generated content over the next 2 years, let's
Mhm.
say, that there's going to have to be some kind of, I don't know what it is, reconciliation.
Correction or shakeout or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, right?
Yeah.
And so what does that mean in 5 years? Yeah, but like I would say that I think, again, humanity's edge is like time is finite. It's like the one thing that they're like you can always make another URL,
Right.
but like
Right.
you can't make more time in your day.
Mhm.
And so how do you spend it? If attention is the scarce commodity and there's so much more stuff competing for your attention, I have always felt, and I think we have reams of data to show this in Message Lab, that like, quality actually wins. If you are trying to capture someone's attention, to go back to the very beginning about like where storytelling comes into play here, like the science of it is that like if you have a really compelling original image that is arresting and it will get someone to stop and they will then choose to read your words or not,
Mhm.
right? But like you could write I don't know, whatever the most amazing words of all time, the Gettysburg Address, the theory of relativity, I don't know, and if you just stick it on the web as like a wall of dense text, nobody is going to read
No one's
it,
going to stop and look at it. Yeah. That's
you
a really
know?
interesting point.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I think thinking through the entire experience of the person whose attention you're trying to get, and
Mhm.
in thinking through, what are all of the things that we can do to signal to the person that this is worthy of your time and attention. And honestly, like it's the things that you have spent the most care creating that are going to be most worthy of their time.
Mhm.
And so you won't be able to just go to ChatGPT and say, give me an 800 word article, stick it on the web, and think that you're going to get a result.
Right. Got it. Ben, it was really great talking to you, talking with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate
All
it.
right. Take care.